Hi, Dean here with Green Elephant Studio, and in this video I'm going to go over what you probably want to do with your mod Duo when you first get it. So there's two things I want to go over. One is I don't know which order I'm going to do it in, but one is the firmware update, and also the updating the plugins in there, because when you get your unit, there's probably been some updates and things since when they first built the unit or when they made the unit. So you're going to want to do that. And then the other thing is to adjust your inputs for the unit's inputs and outputs on the actual hardware itself. And in fact, I'm going to go over that first, because you might get your unit and you just want to go for it, not even plug it into the computer and start playing around with it and listening to all the different crazy things that they have already put into the unit for you. So let's start with that. So here's a unit. I have it plugged in already. Actually, let me show you what it looks like when we start it up. So plug it in. It's got that screen, and it's basically a Linux computer in a box with foot switches and knobs. So it takes a little time to load up, not very long, but it should be done any second here. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you about the input levels, also talk about the output levels. Actually, I pointed to the wrong side. This is the input side, output side, and then also scrolling through some pedal boards and things like that, so you can start playing around with it. In order to get into the well, let's go back here. So inputs. Oh no, I keep pointing at the wrong side. Inputs over here, right beside the inputs. So you got 1 and 2, and when you do build your pedal boards, it's completely routable however you want to route that and out to the other side. But right next to the input, there's an arrow, and there's a little dot there, and that's an LED, and that will give you an indication of how hot of a signal it is receiving. And what you want to make sure you're doing is that you're not clipping it, because this is a analog to digital converter in here, and so once you start clipping, it just sounds horrible. And you want to set it at a level where if you do get a little louder, it's not going to clip it, and if it's playing a little softer, you can still hear it. Now on the softer end, you really don't have to worry too much, because modern day analog to digital converters are super good. I mean, it's not like when they first came out you really had to try and get it as hot as possible. I suggest people not get into that mentality of trying to get it always as hot as possible. And I think you're going to do just fine by just having a healthy signal in here. And so what does that mean? So on the indicator here, the LED will be green when it has a signal. Then it will turn yellow as it gets louder or hotter signal being put in. Then it goes to red, and then to flashing red. Flashing red means you've clipped it. Your signal is just already up there and it's done. It's just going to sound horrible. Red means you're just under it, and so you probably should turn down. And then you've got yellow, which I think is about the healthy range. Actually, I play mostly kind of green touching into yellow, probably mostly in the yellow. So that's where I think is a great place, because if I do play a little harder and send a hotter signal, then I still have quite a bit of headroom to pretty much absorb that and still not clip the input. So that's what I suggest. So how do we get to adjusting that? You will go to the left knob. This is knob number 1, and you press and hold it, and you'll go into the settings screen. Let me try and show that to you. So you see it says settings, banks, current pedal board, and let's see here. Want to go to volume and gains. Go to input, whichever input you're using, and you might want to adjust each one differently. You might have a guitar that has a super hot output, and then you got another one that is not as hot. and you want to adjust the different levels. I don't think that's going to be a huge problem, because once you kind of set it at a good level, each one will probably work okay. But just keep it in mind that you might have to set different ones. Going in there, so it's going to input 1. Sorry for the glare there. Come on. There we go. I'm going to go into input 1, and then there's 2 different adjustments. One is called stage. Stage is just low, medium, and high sensitivities. So just set it at the one that works for you in a general sense. It might be spot on for you just right off the bat. But if it's just a little low or a little hot, that's probably, you probably landed on the one you want. Because what you do is then you go to the next one down in the fine adjust. And by the way, you press the knob to select it. It will go into here, and now you have the fine adjust, so increase or decrease it however you want. All right. So it says here, click to return. So I'm going to go back, and also from this screen, it just says scroll to the top where it says back to volume and gains. Let's go there. Let's talk about outputs. Actually, what I do on mine, I have the output just wide open. You can set it at a -5, -6, -7, around there is probably perfectly safe and a perfectly good level to set it at. For me, I do go directly into a mixer or my recording setup, and so I want it just wide open, so that when it's the indicators here kind of very much match the levels going into my mixer or my recording interface. So maybe you do want to set it at -5 or 6, but give it a try with whatever you're using. If you're plugging into an amplifier, it might be too hot at that level. But also remember, and what I highly suggest is to always have a kind of a master output and a plugin used in the pedal board within the your pedal board that you're going to create in the Duo, and have an output volume. Like this pedal board that it just loaded up has its own output volume, and so using that to make sure you're not overloading the output digital to analog converters. That's what you want to watch for. So again, it's the same thing, green, yellow, red, and flashing red. I set mine to always kind of stay in the yellow, so that if I do hit it a little bit harder, it does, that there's still some headroom left in there. And if it's in green, it's still a very clean and totally usable level. So that's it. The output doesn't have the low, medium, high. It's just either 0 to negative dBs here. So, and that's it. So like I said, I actually set mine at 0. I don't know if that's right or wrong. It's worked for me, but play around with it a bit and see what works for you. It says here, click to return. I hit return, back to here. I'm going to exit, back to settings, and so in the settings menu, you can find all your pedal boards in here. So you go to where it says banks. This will bring up all the different categories. You can set up what's called banks, like kind of like a set list. You can use it that way if you want to, or to categorize your different kinds of pedal boards you create. Maybe you have some made for one band that you work with, and then another bank for another band, or you create set lists on there, and then you can scroll through them with the foot switches once you're in there to you maybe have all your songs in the right order, and you can just hit a button and it scrolls to the next pedal board, and ready for the next song. Or you can just hit all here. So where I'm going in here, and you can find all the different pedal boards listed in here. The folks over at MOD devices, has created a bunch of these pre-made pedal boards, and you know, check it out. Have a good time with them, and I believe they've always put an output here, so make sure you're setting that at a good level. So that is getting started on the actual hardware, and I started with that because I figure some of you just want to plug in and go. But I do suggest getting the firmware and the plugins updated, just so you know. For me, at least, it was all about I want to create my own pedal boards and really just do what I want to do. I didn't really care about these pre-made pedal boards. So this next step was really for people like myself. You know, is a step that I think that I would suggest. By the way, I just from the settings menu or any of those places, if you're ever in the banks or anything, or just want to get right out of it, just press and hold, and there you go. Oh, and by the way, the other knob here, if you press and hold that one, you get a tuner. There's a tuner in here, and right now it's let's see here, it says input 1, you press it, or you click it, and you go to input 2. So if you got two different instruments, you know, just make sure you're selecting the right input for whatever you're trying to tune, and then back 1, 2, and when you want to get out, you just press and hold, and there you go, and you're back. It is set for muting the output when you're tuning, but you can change that if you want to in the settings, and that's kind of something in an advanced setting, and I'll probably go over that in another video. So let's talk about updating the firmware. So what you need to do is make sure you're on a computer that is connected to the internet. Get your USB cable, it comes with it, plug it in, boom. You're not going to see anything change on here, at least in this main menu here. So you plug that in, and we're going to go on a web browser. In this case, I'm using Chrome. I've seen it work with other ones. So let's do that. Put my face to the side, and you're going to want to go to the web address. So modduo, so modduo.local. So modduo.local, and enter. So that's the actual web address. And give it a second here. It's pulling up all the information from the unit. Now, just remember, none of the processing actually happens in your computer. All of it is happening in the unit. So what you're seeing on this browser screen is just kind of a representation, or you know, it's just sending that browser data. You know, so it's. I wonder if I'm making any sense. So all the processing is in the actual unit in here, not in the computer. And so that's kind of one of the really cool things about this. If you happen to pull out the USB cable or anything like that, don't freak out. Just plug it back in, and you're just going to take off where you left off. So I'm going to move my face over here so you can see the important stuff here. So I don't know if you noticed when we first came up here on the right area here, there was a little notice saying updates were available. Those things kind of just kind of go away once you know, a little bit of time passes. But on the bottom right, you see here is it tells you about what the next update version is, and when it was released, and what you want to do is just go ahead and hit download. Now, if you've already been using the Modduo for a while, you know, you may not want to do this because you might have a gig tonight, and you just don't want to chance having an issue. Usually not an issue, but I think some people have had maybe, you know, just updating anything, even your computer. Unless you are certain that all the applications you have are going to move over into the new version, you know, you probably will wait until to do it. So if you have a gig tonight, don't do it right now. But if you're just like me and pretty much just kind of a hobby guy who's maybe go out and play once in a while, you know, go ahead and do it, right? So I don't have a gig tonight. I've got plenty of time before I play again in public, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the download here. You see it's downloading all the information. It says may take a few minutes, and it does take a few minutes. It's probably going to take about 5 minutes to do it. It depends on the version, but I'm going to go ahead and just let it go, and I'll be back with once the update is done. Alright, so the unit updated completely. It said, you know, updating, all that kind of stuff. It said took some time there. It's about 5 minutes, I think, in total it took. And it came back to that screen where it did, I think it restarted itself. It said mod duo, you know, MOD on the screen, and then ended up right here. So back to the pedal board, you know, screen here. So the browser should reload as well. I have had a time where it didn't, so the unit was completely done, but I did have to go ahead and refresh the page, but no problem there. But you shouldn't have that issue, but if you do, just refresh the page. No problem. So the next thing I want to do, now that I know that my unit is completely updated as far as firmware is, I want to make sure all my plugins are actually the most recent versions. Developers will occasionally update their plugins and, you know, either fix bugs or change the interface a little bit, all those kind of things that, you know, it's just like any other software. People you know, these guys are updating their stuff all the time. And so, you know, I like to update mine because I just want to make sure they're working the best that they can. So I'm going to just kind of walk you through this process. To start with, you want to make sure you have you don't have to make sure, but I suggest just having a totally clean pedal board with no plugins on this surface here. So, you know, two ways of doing that. You can just hit the little garbage basket that's on, you know, on the top right of each one, or if that takes too much time, you can always hit this new pedal board button, I guess, up here on the top. I'm going to click that. It brings you to this kind of a blank slate. It already gives you a stereo gain plugin right there. So each of these, you know, looks like pedals, are actually plugins. You know, in the software world, you know, guitar players will call them pedals and whatnot, and it's represented as a pedal, but it's a plugin. So in here, we want to go ahead and delete that. So completely clean, nothing on there. And the reason we do that is if you have anything on there that's trying to get updated, it won't update it because it's open, it's being used, and it's they don't update it. So that's why we're doing this. Go to the bottom left area here, and there's this one. It says plugin store. It's like a shopping bag, and go ahead and click on that. It's going to bring you to this plugin store. Let me see. I'm going to get rid of my face here. So let's see here. Just kind of give you a quick overview. On the very left here, you can find all the different categories of plugins. So delay, distortions, dynamics, so on and so forth. Let's just stay on all. This tells you how many are in there. You can do a search for any specific one. I'm not going to do that right now. You can select this where it says installed only, which just shows you the ones you actually have installed, just the ones installed in your unit. And then let's see here. So let's take that off. So this one says it has 104 in the unit. There's 250 ones in the store right now. And at the top here, there's just some featured plugins, and some of them are you need to purchase them, anywhere from, looks like 10 to 15 pounds. But there's really not a lot of pay ones. Most of these in here are completely free. So, there's just so many. Anyway, down here are all the different plugins. You can scroll all the way through here, get dizzy looking at all of these. Now you probably noticed there's some that have these little, says new version on there. Those are the ones we want to make sure get updated. The ones we have on there are obviously an older version, so it's telling us there's a new one. If it doesn't have any kind of marking here, it means it's not in the unit. Hasn't been installed. So, for example, this one, the DS1, made by, this is the developer, so MOD Devices, Mod Devices did create this one. It says installed. You're all set to go on that one. But here's one, the MDA. It's actually a synth plugin. It's a synth generator. You can click on it and see all the different things about it, the description, all that kind of stuff. And you can actually upgrade it directly from here. I'm just going to click that, and you've just updated that one plugin. But you can see there's a ton of them on here. There's actually quite a few. Going through one by one is kind of a headache. Luckily, at the top right here, they've created an update all. And again, like I said, if you have any plugins on the pedal board, then it's not going to update those. So that's why we got rid of them. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, update all, and there you go. It's going to go through them and keep updating. When it's done, it'll just say done. You'll see this stop. It won't be doing this anymore. So we're going to let that go for a minute here. I don't think it takes too long, maybe about a minute. But I'll be back when it's done. All right, so it finished updating. It did take about 3 minutes, I think, on this unit. Depends on how many plugins need to be updated. So on the top right, up under where it said update all, gave a little message saying all plugins are updated. So we're good to go. Let's see here. So I'm going to hide myself again. And so let's get back to the to what's called the constructor, and it's where it's the pedal board basically that you're going to be creating. So we'll go back there. So it's on the bottom left. You just hit the constructor thing. It looks like a little jigsaw puzzle, and you are all set. So we have now updated the firmware, updated all the plugins, and you also have your inputs all set. Check your outputs, make sure they're at a good level also. So you are basically all set now, if you've done everything on this video, to really just start playing around and having a good time with the Mod Duo. I know I did take a little while to kind of explain things and go through it, but I think this is an important step to just kind of go through, just to make sure your unit is up to date and ready to rock, so you're not missing out on things. Right now it is November 8th, 2018, so if there's new updates after this, you might have, there might be other things that you'll see that are not on my videos that I'm doing today. But these guys over at Mod Devices are updating things all the time. They're coming out with new features, and that's really part of the wonderful thing about this. Whenever any of those comes out, you do the same process, and it's just that easy. So in the next video, I'm going to do a kind of an overview of this, of the user interface, and I hope you watch that. So thanks for watching, and see you at the next video.